Okay, we're in the book of Judges, not the book of Gideon. And we're in Judges 6. We're getting to the action part, or the aftermath of the action part. So, yesterday, Gideon, on the command of the Lord, went and tore down the altar at nighttime. He waited until nighttime, and we're about to see why. And again, we commented on the commentators who say, why didn't he do it during the day? Almost with the implication that they are big and tough and strong and they would have done it that way. All right, so this is how it went down. So let's remind ourselves also that this is God's way of deliverance from the hand of the external enemy. Midian was the problem that Gideon was aimed at by the Lord. But what's the first thing? What's the first mission that God entrusts Gideon with? It was the tearing down of the altar of Baal and the chopping down and burning of the Asherah pole. So that tells us something about reformation, about real change. Real change never comes from pointing out the atrocities or injustices of this other party. No matter how much you do that, no matter how voluminous you are, how accurate you are, how much video backing and footnotes you have, it's never going to get you anywhere, because ultimately, if we have an external enemy, it's because of an internal problem. It's a religious problem affecting the society, not just an individual. And let's again remember that God is dealing with an individual. He deals with individuals. He's dealing with Gideon. But he's also dealing with a nation. So God deals with individuals as individuals, but he also is dealing with nations as nations. So there would be those who preferred only to think of the national thing and, well, this is a Christian nation, and we have the Church of England or whatever happened, and this is our tradition, these are our churches. We're not Muslims, we're not Hindus. Rah, rah, rah. But yes, well, God does deal with the nation as a nation, but he also deals with the individual as an individual. So we can't have a Christian nation composed of really unbelieving, unconcerned people. And certainly if real change is going to happen, it's going to happen at the religious level. And this is what God does. Just to remind you, verse 27, so Gideon took 10 men from among his servants and did as the Lord had said to him. But because he feared his father's household and the men of the city too much to do it by day, he did it by night. New King James Version. All right, so what happens? Let's have a look. Verse 28, and when the men of the city arose early in the morning, there was the altar of Baal torn down, and the wooden image that was beside it, it was cut down, and the second bull, it says, was being offered on it. Other translation says was offered on the altar which had been built. All right. This is the first thing they see. All the men of the town seeing this one outrage and acting together as one people. So they said to one another, who has done this thing? And when they had inquired and asked, they said, Gideon, the son of Joash, has done this thing. So they're earnest. They're totally in earnest. This is a great offense to them. It's like standing on the American flag, burning the American flag. It's like saying you don't like football in Alabama. That's a little bit of a joke, all right? Maybe not so much, but this has really hit them at their core. At their core. And remember, these people were the Israelites. The Israelites. They were offended, wouldn't be in it. They were outraged, scandalized by the fact that the altar of Baal, they don't say the altar of Jehovah. They don't say, well, this is where we worship God. They said the altar of Baal. There was the altar of Baal. It is no ifs, no buts. So it would be like tearing down a cross in the middle of the town, except, well, would we be that offended if that happened? There's a story a few years ago of an asylum seeker who tore down a cross on top of a Christian church. And the response of the church involved was they were sorry to have caused offense by having the cross there. And so you see that the outrage isn't there because that's not their religion. That's not their core. But if you said to that same minister or ministerette, well, I don't believe in global warming. I think this CO2 is poison, is a myth. Well, now you've touched a nerve. So the question is, what is the nerve that really gets our goat? What is it? When we find that center that motivates us, maybe it's us as an individual. If you say something about me, if you threaten my livelihood, if you do this, if you do that, then that touches the apple of your eye. And it's clear that these were not Sunday morning Baal worshippers. All the town, as a town, talking about how God deals with individuals as individuals, nations as nations, the whole town was united together. So this was not just a few stragglers here and a few stragglers there. No, this was the whole town as one man. And they made diligent inquiry until they got to the root cause. It's a small town, so they're going to take all of 15 minutes. Well, I heard this and I saw that and I recognize that bull and I know the way, this is chopped down. That's definitely Gideon's work. All right. Then the men of the city said to Joash, bring out your son that he may... Okay. Where else in Scripture do we have a story of a city assembling at somebody's house and asking to bring someone out? Anybody there at the back? Anybody? No? You? No? Okay. The answer is Sodom. Sodom. The men of the city came as one man to the entrance of a powerful man's house. Lot was a powerful man. And he said, bring out this angel, expletive, expletive, expletive. Very bad thing they wanted to do. They didn't want to kill him. They probably would have killed him as a result of it, but they wanted to do very bad things to the person that was inside. But here it's even worse in Israel. They wanted to kill the person for the crime of what? What was the crime? What was the crime here? Well, according to the law of God, was this a crime? Well, generally speaking, it is a crime, of course, to take private property, take property that belongs to someone else, and break it up, destroy it. All right. Is this a case of broken? Are they concerned because private property has been defaced, destroyed? No. Well, if we're thinking from God's perspective, what offense is there here? Well, was this some kind of an altar of Jehovah? Well, if so, hands off my altar. But we know that the altar was in the tabernacle. Okay? So what was the offense? And we look through and we scan through and we think, well, what is the offense? And we actually find there is something there. But instead of it being an offense, it was mandated by God. Smash and cut down their high places. Don't have anything to do with them. Grind them to powder. Don't even ask how they conducted their religion. You got to destroy it. So let's say Christian people, the good old boys, the true blue Brits, however you want to put it, the born into the Church of England people, they wanted to kill the man for obedience to the law of God. And that's something to note. That's a good barometer of a person. What is their attitude towards the law of God as it's written down? Not as they think it's written down, but as it's written down. The very details of it. And of course, Gideon would have known this, that this was, in fact, a command. And he was being deputized by God, empowered by God as a civil officer, civil magistrate, to do this. He was being elected by God as a judge to carry this out. That's why he had the authority to do it. And that should interest us because the Bible is not a libertarian document. We don't say that the state is evil. We don't say that taxation is always theft. Now, 99% of taxation is theft, granted, and the state does evil things, granted, but the civil authority is a real realm. The civil magistrate is a real thing. God does give authority to his officers. He does deputize and empower the state. Let's just say civil magistrate to have powers above the average citizen. So any kind of egalitarian idea that says, well, it's wrong to elevate someone on top of another person, that's out the window. He is acting as God's man here, God's empowered and authorized civil servant, as it were. Bring out your son that he may die, because he has torn down the altar of Baal, and because he has cut down the wooden image that was beside it. Interestingly, that they don't mention the word Asherah pole. I don't know why. Maybe it's just so well known. And they were outraged and incensed because they had taken something that was exactly contrary to the law of God and put it in the place of really the devotion that they gave this idol, this altar, this image, the devotion that should have been reserved only for Jehovah. Okay? They had a passion that should have only been for God and his cause. And this is the nature of what's called syncretism, or mixing religion, mixing one religion with another. If you mix, and it's done all the time in every sector, if you mix the Christian faith with secular humanism, okay, what takes precedence? Secular humanism. If you mix the Christian faith with some kind of individualism, I don't know, I'm not very good at picking things out of the air here, but the point is, Jehovah always takes second place. It's true, the little saying, isn't it, that he's either Lord of all or he's not Lord at all. Okay, if he's not in this total position, then he's in second place, third place, fourth place, fifth place. Now, we must bear in mind also that these people still worship Jehovah, but who was close? Who really provided? They reckoned that it was Baal. Baal was close. Asher was close. They protected fertility. They protected militarily. Baal protected that way. So, what are we to make of all this? How are we to intersect it all? Well, again, a good rule of thumb is that take this and copy and paste it into our own day, and then try to figure out who the Baal is, who the Asherah is. Because I don't think we see intense passion for the cause of God. There was a chap in, I think, Belgium, 3 people in Belgian television that took a statue of Mary and a statue of Jesus and smashed it on Danish state TV. And an Irish commentator questioned them about this and said, okay, well, would you do this if it was a Quran? Would you do this if it was Buddha? And the look of horror. Well, my goodness me, I never offend anybody. That would be horrible. That would be. So we know that in Christian countries, there's not this respect. But there is a horror of desecrating false religions, the images of false religions. I remember when the huge Buddha was blown up by the Taliban way back, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago now, I don't know when. But the outrage there was about that, and we see that things are rather mixed up. But in our own lives, bringing it much closer to home, do we have that passion for the symbols of God, the causes of God in our local area, in our life? And what really gets us to prick up? Is it the fact our ears to prick up and get our goat? Is it, well, the waiting lists are too long at the hospital? Is it that we're going to have to pay a surcharge for getting books at the school? What is it that really inflames you? And that is a good indication of what your God is. And let's look at this also from the point of view of God's project here and God's man. God's project is to free that nation from the Midianites. How's that going? Well, this is his first step. And all the people rallied around Gideon, didn't they? And they said, go, Gideon, we're with you 100%. No. When the first step away from, the first step of true reform comes, 99% of people are going to hate it. They're going to want to lynch the person that did it because their ox is getting gored. And if you want to work in reform or to restore Christianity, and if you're on God's trajectory, if you're following God's orders as Gideon did, you're going to be striking, first of all, at the local gods. And there's just no two ways about it. The local god is the state. It is the clinic, the NHS clinic. It is the children's allowance. It is all these benefits. It's welfare payments. It's this job with the pensions and so on. If you touch that, you've touched the third rail. Bzzzt. You're going to draw all the ire, all the heat towards you. So who was Gideon fighting? Well, was he fighting the people? Well, kind of. He was fighting what was closest to their hearts. But what was he doing also? And this is how we develop it later on. But Joash said to all who stood against him, Joash is Gideon's father, would you plead for a Baal? So this is the man in charge. And yet whatever is in his mind here, perhaps he knows, perhaps there's something in it for him. He knows really this is just a joke. Maybe, I don't know. Would you plead for a Baal? Would you save him? Let the one who would plead for him be put to death by morning. If he is a god, let him plead for himself, because his altar has been torn down. What's the dynamic here? How can we bring it up to date for us? What is Gideon doing? Well, he broke down the altar. Fair enough. But what's the bigger picture if you zoom out? The bigger picture is that he's showing Baal and Asherah to be what? Impotent, powerless. And they have to be seen as powerless by the people. The only power that Baal has, the only power that Asherah has, is the power of devotion that is given to them. And let's remember where we are in the pecking order. We are above the angels, a little lower than the angels, and crowned them with glory. Crowned them with glory by bearing the image of God, and perhaps even more so by being a temple for God's Spirit. We aren't in charge, but we have a destiny that the angels can't even imagine or comprehend. So we are by nature above these gods. If we say that gods are demons, then certainly in God's order, in God's pecking order, we are above them. So the only power that they have is power that is given to them. And I have heard stories in Africa of the cult, the local cult of each village. Each village has its cult. Interestingly, it has a male cult and a female cult, Baal and Asherah. And periodically, depending on the cult, which varies from village to village, there needs to be a blood sacrifice. There needs to be a human sacrifice. And I've heard a story of the person who was chosen by the elders to be sacrificed. And of course there was human sacrifice with Baal. Of course there was. The person who was chosen became a Christian, heard word of it, got wind of it, and then hightailed it out of the village into the big city, to Dakar. And all sorts of things were done to try and kill him. They tried to bring in a powerful marabout, a powerful, let's say, wizard, to curse him, and paid him lots of money, and they were all gathered around. He said, I can't touch him. I can't touch him. Why? Because there was a light around him. And as a result, the cult of the village was broken. So, and that's also interesting in that where is the power of the demonic? Where is the power of the state, for that matter, the godless state? It's the power to create. Is it? No, it's the power to destroy. They wanted to kill the man. That's what they could do. They couldn't make anything. They could only take what man has made and then redistribute it or waste it. What does the state do? Does it make anything? The godless state makes nothing. It's supposed to do justice, but what does it do? It takes money, it siphons it off to its buddies, it siphons it off to what remains from giving billions to its buddies, it gives to civil servants, and then what little else is redistributed goes to fixing a pothole. That's the way it works. It takes, and it's all based on this religious con job. That has to be broken. It's not good enough to write an article about it, although that's powerful actually. But what has to be done is a demonstration that this is a false god. This is powerless. You can't do anything. It's totally useless. That's what has to be done, and that's the point at which we have to reach in our own day. And it's very interesting, perhaps the last point, to say this. Who was the one who protected Gideon? It was his father. If his father had not been keeper of the Baal Asherah site, he would have died. But in God's providence, and this shows you the power of God, he's able to engineer things so that he's protected. God's man is protected in the most strange of circumstances. And it tells us that God is able to take someone from a position of being in the core of the cult, his own father owns the site, and still make of him a man who knows God's word, who fears God, and who obeys God even in difficult circumstances. All right, so I think we've learned a lot there. I think there's a lot there to unpack, and I hope that blessed you. Thanks.